Good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. It's kind of a nice day. Ground's still soaked with water, but turns everything green. So I like that part of it. Hey, do me a favor. Just give me a sound check, an AV check that tells me you can hear and see me. I'm looking at my phone on LinkedIn, and I'm not seeing any of the numbers I usually see. So just let me know whether you're there. And as we get started, I just wanted to share a tip from that relates to our training today, a tip for success. And it comes from Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. And he has this habit that says, begin with the end in mind. And today I'm going to be talking about shaping opportunities, et cetera, so that you can kind of win it. And the end in mind is I want to win a contract. And so if you begin with the end in mind and you start backing up and say, how can I shape it? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about today. But you can use that aspect in all sorts of things. When you go into a meeting, you can begin with the end in mind. I call this an objective. If I'm having a meeting with a government buyer, I want to know what my objective is from that meeting. What will be a measure of success? And then I can back my activity up. If you haven't read Stephen Covey's book, Highly Effective People, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, definitely check it out. I love the audio. Okay, thanks for people putting the okay sign in chat. I'll just assume we're good to go as we move forward. Let me turn some of my stuff off and we'll get rock and rolling. Straighten my collar. That's important. Okay. So today's training, we're going to be talking about winning more federal contracts, specifically through shaping opportunities. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. It's part of Capture. Inside of the federal government, if you're new to federal market, this will be new to you. But if you've been around a while, you should kind of already understand this, right? Federal sales has 3 phases, is the way I like to describe it. It has BD, capture, and proposal writing. So BD is business development. This is where you're finding opportunities that are a fit for your company. And then you move into capture. When you find, let's say, an opportunity, you move into the capture phase. And this is where you're shaping that opportunity to the point where you massively increase your chances of winning. And then proposal writing is bidding on that opportunity. So it's making sure you're writing what I like to say, a clear, compliant, compelling, and convincing message to the buyer on why they should choose you. In federal sales, those 3 phases are all equally important. You need to do all 3 of them. And too often I find that people are skipping capture, right? And I like to say, if you're not winning at the rate you want to win, if you're not winning the amount of revenue you want, et cetera, if you're not winning enough, generally you're not doing enough capture. And if I was being very candid about my feelings on it, generally I can look in and go, you're not doing capture at all. And one of the hardest things for us to do sometimes is take a look at ourselves and go, well, are we really doing it? I argue that people often have great people in the role, but the process is not either being defined clearly or not being followed. And we'll be talking today about the process around capture. But when you do capture, you're going to have success. I put here, capture is a process that is full of leading indicators for your success, or leading indicators that you're not going to have success. If you look at the things that are happening in capture, that is leading up to the proposal and leading up to the award or no award. Well, those are all leading indicators to the chances that you're going to have success or no success. And that's a really important part of capture, especially for leadership, as you're looking into your team and you're saying, is my team doing the right things? And how can I help them do the right things? It comes down to really understanding your capture process. And that's what I'm going to try to drive into today is open your mind or reopen our minds to some of the ways we can influence the government and how I shape requirements within a federal opportunity. I'm going to break up today's training into 3 phases. Again, apparently I like the 3 phases. I'm going to start with why shaping an opportunity matters. It is really important, but sometimes we got to stop for a second and go, well, why, right? I'm totally okay with the whole idea behind why, because if you understand the why, then the what and the how becomes so much easier, right? So we'll start with that, and then we're going to go into the 2 different sections. So ways to shape the technical requirements or scope of the work that the government has, and then how you can shape the acquisition approach. This is how the government is buying what they need to buy. You can influence the government for sure. I remember having a conversation with a senior contracting officer who'd come out, they had like 30 years, like, no, you can't influence us. And it only took 1 minute of conversation for them to go, oh, Well, they were seeing it more like a negative thing. But when I had this conversation about, I have a meeting and I talk about this, then the government will sit there and decide, do I like what you're saying or do I not like what you're saying? That's influence. It's not negative. Influence is not negative. It's just this ability to shape an opportunity through meetings and discussions, etc. Okay, so that's how we're going to break this training down today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I am co-founder of GovCon in a Box, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market after I got out of the Army, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. This is what I want for you. This is what I'm going to be teaching you today, is that all of your opportunities in your pipeline, as you're pursuing them, if you follow capture process, then you're going to have repeatable, predictable results in your sales activities. That's what I want for you. If you're over on Twitter or YouTube, thanks for watching. If this is your first time seeing me, make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm part of your network. You're part of mine. I'd love to connect with you, especially if you're in the GovCon space, right? And then also reach out to people who are in the chat. Even after the fact, you can come back. If you're coming back and looking at the comments, you can engage. Hey, I saw you in Neil's training. I'd love to connect. Just connecting on LinkedIn is the beginning part of networking with each other. If you're open to connecting, put that into the chat. I'm open to connecting. Okay, so I tend to have a lot of content in my training, and so I want to push forward on it. I'm actually 2 minutes ahead of schedule, so we'll see how this works for me. So let's begin with why shaping a federal opportunity, or really any opportunity, it doesn't matter what kind of sales you're in, why shaping an opportunity is really important and why it matters to you and why it matters to your company's success. I put 5 bullets in here that I'm going to share, and I put them in a really important category by the size of the text. That's the way I ordered it. Today, I just felt like having it come down, but they're in no other particular order because they're all really valuable. But I got fortunate that the first bullet that I have is really the most important. The reason you want to shape opportunities is because it increases your chance of winning. If you don't shape your opportunities, your chances of winning here. But if you're able to influence even a little bit with the customer, then you've just increased your chance of winning. We want that, right? The second thing is it eliminates many of your competitors. When you start shaping opportunities, you scare competitors away. They might go, it's wired for some other company. They might sit there and say, I couldn't do this. I'm going to show you ways to scare them away. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just competition, right? But you want to eliminate competition that's out there. The largest do this, and we smalls can do this as well. And sometimes we don't think about it. And I'm just putting, eliminate many of the competition. What I really mean is if you can influence the opportunity to a certain degree, then a lot of people won't be able to go after it. Quick example is like if you can get this pushed, an opportunity to Oasis. Well, if you're not on Oasis, you can't go after that. That's the end of that, right? That's an example of scaring away the competition or pushing them or eliminating many of the competition. That's a really important thing. One of the ways you increase your chances of winning is by showing them how great you are. Another is by just eliminating other great companies so that you rise higher up on the list. This is sales. Third thing is maximizing the value of your strengths. So when you're shaping an opportunity, the reason it matters is because you can make your company's strengths seem much more important in the customer's eyes, right? That's your job. And by the way, you don't do it in one meeting. You do it over the course of months, right? Things that you respond to, maybe in an RFI or source of thought, in meetings you have, et cetera. But you're trying to maximize the value of your strengths and minimize your weaknesses, or even eliminate your weaknesses. So if you look in, a weakness might be like, let's say Oasis. I don't have Oasis, right? But if I could shape the opportunity to come out on a different contract vehicle, like let's say GSA Mass, and I have that, well, now my weakness has been eliminated because the government is looking at a GSA contract vehicle that I do have, right? And there's multiple ways you can maximize your strengths, both on the technical side of the house and the acquisition or the procurement side. And I'll show you more about what I mean there. So those third and fourth bullets, maximize your strengths, minimize your weaknesses. And the last reason I put here on why shaping federal opportunities matters to you and to your company is that if you're not doing it, somebody is, right? And it's always your competitor. I put here, if not you, then who? Well, guaranteed it's going to be your competitor. right? And you want to be the one influencing the way the government thinks. Because, when you think about it, there's only three parties who can influence an opportunity: the government all by themselves, your competitor, or you, or your competitors and you, right? Those three stakeholders or parties are in there. You need to show up and influence the opportunity or influence the federal buyer in a way that they see you in more favorable light than your competitors. That is normal sales activity, and there's nothing underhanded about it. It's about showing them why. At the very end, I think I might mention this, but you influence through data and evidence, right? You don't influence through a cup of coffee or taking them to lunch or something. You influence through data and evidence. I'm saying, government buyer, you should do this. Here's the data and evidence that makes you realize that it's a smart move for you to do that. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, but that's our job in capture as we go forward. Okay, so let's talk about ways to shape an opportunity on the technical side, the technical scope or technical requirements. Again, just as a reminder, the program office, think about the program office. Those are the people who have the technical requirements. The acquisition approach, how we buy, is done by the contracting shop. There's other people who influence around, but basically those are the two main stakeholders. So on the technical side, I'm trying to influence the technical requirements, what I might see in a performance work statement, SAL, or statement of objectives, et cetera. So the first thing I'm looking at is, and going back to this whole idea of my strengths and weaknesses. When I'm going in there, I want to maximize my strengths and weaknesses. A quick example is my last company. I was doing Microsoft SharePoint, right? And so I might maximize some of my strengths. As an example, is that we used to do development, and we'd go up against people who were doing SharePoint development, but they only did custom code. And so we would go in there and teach the government that there's actually 3 levels of software development within Microsoft SharePoint. You could do out of the box, you could do third-party type tools, and you could do custom code. Many of our competitors, they didn't even realize that there was really out of the box power. But because we were so good at it, we would go in there and influence the government and show them our strengths and begin to align them to what we're good at by saying, hey, we can come in and lower your cost of development by making sure the applications that could be built with out of the box functionality are done that way. And we only do custom code on something that can't be done out of the box. This would open the government's eyes to going, oh, I really want 3-tier. And, if you're lucky, you can influence it in a way that they don't totally put it into the performance work statement, but they're thinking about that. And then when you write a response, you're really talking about that. You're talking about how you triage a request on whether it goes out of the box, third party, or custom. So I'm getting a little technical there. And the same thing opposite with your weaknesses. We might be weak on a certain thing. Like if I was doing Microsoft SharePoint and they said, I want Salesforce integration, or we wanted to do this particular thing, but we weren't that good at it, we would try to have conversations and show them how, hey, maybe you should look at this different direction because other agencies have done it. It works really well. And I'm spinning the story and the narrative in my favor, but trying to minimize the value of my weakness to them, meaning I want to make what is my weakness less important to them. So that's bullet number 1, is you're in there shaping along your strengths and weaknesses. The rest of the bullets all basically fall into those 2 categories. Number 2, and this is one of my favorite things, is I like putting in, especially when the government asks, and they're like, hey, give us an SLA or service level agreements that you think we should be including. Give us KPIs. I like making those the hardest ones possible, right? I want to make sure that our company can absolutely do it, but I want to make it really hard. Like, if a request comes in, instead of responding within 4 hours, you must respond within 1 hour or something. And we've got a system in place that we can do that. You want to think about what are your key performance indicators, those KPIs that align to the work the government is trying to get done, and make those KPIs, if it's a number, make it a higher expectation. An example is if the government says we need to have 99% uptime, we go, hey, we'll have it up 99.999% of the time or something much higher. So that's number 2. Number 3, in a way you can shape an opportunity on the technical side of the house, is look at the certifications that are needed. Certifications could be something like organizational certifications, ISO or CMMI for software development, things like that, or individual certifications like PMP for project managers or Microsoft certified engineers, things like that. If you have the certifications, you want to try to get them put in and demonstrate the value of why the government should be looking for people who are working on the project who are certified. The reverse is also true. If remember, it's a strength and weakness exercise. If you don't have certain certifications, you want to minimize that. We used to go after work with Microsoft SharePoint, and there was this third-party company called AvePoint. We were like one of the only ones that were certified. And so we would talk about, hey, you want to make sure you have certified engineers who can do that work as well, because those people are tied directly back to the company. They can influence the requirements that are coming out so that features are put in that help your agency, whatever it is, right? Those certifications that people or your organization might have, you want to talk about them with first internally to make sure you know which ones you want in the opportunities you're going after and which ones you want to eliminate. Capture is about balancing that out in your favor. Number 4, the work that needs to be done, and this is really important as you go in. You're talking about the requirements. You might look at all the task areas. There's 7 task areas. You might introduce more task areas. Hey, this kind of stuff is here, but I would encourage you to also have this other element of tasks that are in there. As long as it has value to what their overall need is, they're gonna be open to the discussion, and they might even sit there and say, you know what, that's a good idea. We're gonna modify our draft performance work statements to have this additional set of tasks. Well, you're doing that because that's what you're really good at. You're like, hey, we've done this before. We got past performances. Let's try to make sure they see the value of it. And again, you're not trying to tell them to do anything that is not of value, but they're only thinking of what they've thought of, clearly, right? And they look to you as an industry expert to say, what else should we be thinking about? Well, if you want success with this particular need or requirement you have, we encourage you have additional task areas in there that will make your overall success, mission success, higher. And so that's shaping the actual task areas that are in there. Those are areas you need to think about. Number 5, language that aligns to your past performance. This is beginning to look at whatever they're writing in their draft performance work statements, their requirement documents, right? Maybe including some language that is also in previous scopes. So say I did work with the Air Force, and now I'm going to do work with the Navy with SharePoint, and the Navy's using some different kind of language. I might try to include some of the language that was in my previous contract's scope, right? That also might be in my CPARs as well, in the ratings, but especially in the scope, because if I have language that's in a scope on the Air Force side, and I can influence the Navy to say, oh yeah, that looks good, let's put that in. And I might even send them my requirement document, say, this is what the Air Force did, you guys might value it. If I can get it in, then when I'm going and submitting my past performances, my past performance requirement documents have the exact kind of language that is in this new opportunities scope of work. So that's an alignment. I'm trying to make a much better alignment between my current contracts or past performance and my new opportunities I'm pursuing. Number 6, kind of expanding on that, right, is you want to influence especially the program office's eyes, the past performance requirements. Again, remember, it's a strength or weakness exercise. If you don't have that much past performance, or if you don't have it kind of the way you think they're describing it, minimize what they need. For me, my last company in SharePoint, we were very good at Microsoft SharePoint. We had fantastic past performances. And so we would put something in like, hey, you probably want to make sure you've got vendors who have done SharePoint migrations, let's say, at 100,000 user environments or 10,000 user plus. That eliminates a ton of competitors because there's not that many opportunities out there. And we were one of the very few. I mean, we used to go toe-to-toe with Microsoft, who was $1 billion company, because we had past performances of that size. And when we saw opportunities, we tried to influence the size that they would say your past performance needed to be in, maybe user count. So that's the scope size or something, or the type of work. Also the value, right? Is it $1 million or $5 million or $10 million past performance type piece of work? And then the customer, right? Do we want to sit there and minimize the need for me to have worked in the Navy, and more importantly, say that you just need to have worked in multiple DoD entities so you can bring that experience in? Or on the flip side is, if I'm in the Navy, I want to argue that, hey, there's a lot to be said between onshore and afloat on the boats and trying to bring them together kind of thing, right? I would emphasize that you really need a Navy person to do that, like us. And that's influencing number 6, the past performance requirements. You don't want to let this just happen to you. Capture is about going in and trying to, through data and evidence, trying to influence the government to think about their requirements in a way that puts you in very favorable light. Okay, hopefully that makes sense there. Shape the requirements. Put that in the chat if you're tracking on what I'm saying, is shape the requirements. While you do that, let me just thank our sponsors for these lives. I do these lives free every single day. The SBA doesn't do it. I'm not getting anything from government entities, et cetera. We do this because we want to bring you value. And these sponsors are some of the people who help make this happen. So thank you to Graham Inc. They do staffing and ASL support services. KZO, I see Kate is on here today. And actually, you should look at what Kate puts in the chat better than what I say on what she does. But fractional finance and contract support for your company, pre and post award. So definitely check out KZO. And Steel Toe does cybersecurity services, in particular CMMC, for those of you supporting the DoD. And then finally, GovCon in a Box is my company with my co-founders. We have a company that helps you find and win federal opportunities. That's what we're building, is a series of tools that finally align to all the training I've been doing for the last 8 years. Go check us out at govconinabox.com. Thank you to the sponsors. Okay, so let's talk about, I'm doing pretty good. I got 9 minutes left here. Let's talk about shaping the acquisition approach. I talked about the program office technical scope side of the house, right? That's the work to be done. Now I want to talk about the acquisition approach, how a contracting officer is going to buy from you, right? And there's a lot of decisions that are in there, and often those just go in as a template and come back out. No one ever influenced them or tried to change it. But you can influence every single thing that is in an opportunity. Sometimes you'll be successful and sometimes you won't. That's totally cool. And again, I didn't put it here, but remember, you're trying to increase your strengths and decrease your weaknesses, or eliminate your weaknesses from an opportunity. So the first one I said here is NAICS code, or PSC. The idea behind the NAICS code, a quick little example is, an opportunity might come out and it's at a particular NAICS. If you're a small business, and let's say you're doing 20 million and above, but you're still a small business. Well, you want a NAICS code that is higher than like a $15 million threshold so you can compete. But if you're a company that's 10 million or below, you want to get rid of those $20 million companies. And so you want a NAICS code that says this company is considered small at 15 million or 7 million or 30 million, whatever it is. But your NAICS code can influence that, right? And so it pushes out a lot of competition. The thing to keep in mind is it requires that data and evidence. I'm saying you have to show them that this NAICS code has been used for this type of work many, many times. And so it makes sense to do that. And it's best if you can show them that it was used within your own agency, right? So that's one thing you can do. Second way you can influence the acquisition approach is the contract vehicle. How are they buying? They might buy on a GSA mass schedule, but there's hundreds of those for the moment, right? Which one are they buying on? You need, if you want to be a prime contractor, you need it to be on one of the contract vehicles you have. So you want to get the government to consider your contract vehicle. Second thing is you want to push them off vehicles that are outside your world. And I used this example before. If you're on GSA, but not on Oasis or Seaport or something, you want to try to push them over. The idea of a contract vehicle is that is one of the quickest ways to eliminate a ton of competition. If you look at Seaport, that's got like, 2,000 people on it. But if I could push an opportunity over to, HCAPS or something like this, right? Another contract vehicle, doesn't matter what it's called, but it only has 20 or 30 vendors and I'm one of them. I've just eliminated 1,000 competitors. That's a good day, right? And that's what we should be doing as capture people, is trying to get it on our contract vehicle. And you want to be doing this early. When you see something in the forecast, get in there and start talking to them. When you see a source of SOT or an RFI, get in there and try to influence that. Number 3, and I think number 4 are two of my all-time favorite things to do, because people don't like to be rushed. And many of our competitors go after too many opportunities that are unrelated to what they're very good at, their slam dunk opportunity. But if all I did was went after my slam dunk opportunity, I literally could write a proposal response within a day or two, right? And if it's a much bigger opportunity, it might take me 3 or 4 days. But if I keep to my core competency, let's say my last business, SharePoint, then I can write it in 3, 4 days, right? And so I try to get in and convince the government, it's like, hey, why leave it out there a long time? 10 days, get it done, and you're off to the races or something. You try to influence that in there, or just suggest it and see if it can happen. 15 days tends to be an average. And when they start pushing it out beyond that, just the number of competitors who will feel like they should respond increases. And so I want to decrease that. The other thing, number 4, is the response. Oh, I kind of got it mixed up a little bit. I said response time, that one. But number 3 is response pages. I like shrinking it down from 100 pages to 50, from 15 pages to 10 kind of thing. I want the least amount of pages because most people can't write concisely. They can't get their message across about how they can help the government in a few amount of pages. All you have to do is look at a 3-page response and how difficult it is for people to communicate that. If I say, tell me what you sell in 3 or 4 words, people will tell me it in 30 or 40 words. I'm like, no, 3 or 4 words. If you can't do that, I can't remember it. And on the response side, I can try to work with the government and say, look, if people can't convince you in 10 pages what they do, how are they going to convince you in 50 pages, right? You want to be able to quickly see, you get my requirements, you can bring a technical approach that will solve my problem, and you've done it before. Like fundamentally, that's the response, right? And so the less pages I can get, the better. More pages means more competitors. Number 5, I love to use this orals for down select, right? Orals is just going in and having an interview with the government. Sometimes it's one-sided where we just talk and walk away. Sometimes it's the government asking questions. I don't care what the dialogue is. What I want is for you to evaluate all of us based on talking to us, because then you bring your experts, right? And many competitors, they just write responses and proposals, but they don't actually have people who are experts. And if your company is at that stage where you have subject matter experts, or you're a subject matter expert, you want to get in and talk to them about how you will approach, so they can see it in your eyes that, wow, this would be a great partner for us and support the mission. Number 6, you want to push set aside. So the first set aside you want to push on an opportunities, you want to get it pushed down to a small business from full and open. Full and open means every single person or company who's trying to sell to the government, and that's like 350,000 plus. Every one of them can compete. I want to push it to small, and now I got rid of the larges, right? Then I want to do one tag. And the reason I said one tag, by the way, a tag is just HUBZone, woman-owned, service disabled veteran, and 8A. Those are the only 4 tags that really matter from a set-aside perspective. You want to advocate only one. I don't care if you are all 4. If you say, hey, pick one of the 4, they're not going to pick any, right? So you might as well not have even asked for the tag. But if you push it down, you could do your own research and go, hey, if I have one tag, I want to push for woman-owned small business set aside. If I have a couple of tags, you know what I want? If I'm a woman-owned small business in an 8A, I'd rather push it to a woman-owned set aside. Because if it goes 8A, then I got to compete against billion-dollar ANCs or something, right? So you can look at that. But number 6, try to influence the set aside. Number 7 here is use of subcontractor past performance. This is one that enables you to build a more powerful team than just yourself, right? As a small business, let's say doing 5 or 10 million, it'd be really handy to have a $20 or $50 million company as a sub, and you can use one of their past performances as one of the 3, right? If the government says, I want 3 past performances, that'll be really handy because they can bring something that you don't have, and that makes your team and your response so much stronger. Okay, so I'm running out of time here. And the whole idea of this is, and really, I think I put this in the first thing I want you to remember from today's training, is you can influence federal buyers. You can influence all buyers, right? You just need to provide them data and evidence, and you will be able to convince them. And the key thing to remember is if you're not doing capture, if you're not influencing the buyer and having meetings and trying to influence the buyer, somebody is, and it's always your competitor. Hey, if you're doing $2+ million and you're looking for some support on getting into the federal agency, being visible to the federal buyers and getting in the door to tell your story, reach out to us. We got a little room for a couple other customers in our BD Accelerator workshop. Love to have you join us. Just put workshop in the chat. We'll follow up. Remember, as you head into the weekend, you head into the next week, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.